Walden here for Mix's Award Season Event 2025. Joining me are sound designer, supervising sound editor Nathan Robitaille, and supervising sound editor Nelson Ferreira on director Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. Nathan, Nelson, thank you guys so much for being here. It's so good to see you both. And thanks for discussing your work on Frankenstein, which is just so incredible.
Thanks for having us.
Hi, and thank you.
So you guys have worked with Del Toro many times before, The Shape of Water, for instance. So tell me about your collaboration this time around. Like, what were some of the key sonic aspects that Del Toro wanted you to focus on initially for Frankenstein?
I'll speak to one of the early scenes that got sent to me. This is just chronologically speaking. The first thing that Evan sent to me was the wolf attack, because they were going to screen it for someone at Netflix. I'm not sure who, but they had a screening on the books, and the early images were just a bunch of guys in green unitards with wolf stuffies on their hands munching away at Jacob Elordi, and they needed it to sound a little bit more vicious than it looked. So I got to work with the snarling wolves and, gnarly bites and stuff like that. I mean, that got sweetened through the process. I mean, you never put a scene like that down and walk away. It's never pencils down until the DCP is printed. But largely, like all the beats that you hear in the movie now were in at an early stage. And then, like we'll talk about this, but like a lot of the other scenes in the movie, I made sure to pass that around and give each of the editors a crack at it, because this movie, to me at least, had to be a Frankenstein's monster of all of the editors who contributed to it, to make sure
Nice.
that we're all part of every scene. And it was kind of a real collaborative experience.
That was such a heartbreaking scene with the wolves. That was the creature's friend. It was so touching.
Yeah, I mean, right there, then we hand it off to Nelson. The dialogue in that scene could pull tears out of you.
Yeah. We were actually working on the Cabinet of Curiosities, Guillermo's Netflix series, the series he produced at the time that Frankenstein came up, and he was around, and he gave the directors of those episodes pretty much free rein, and he had things to say, but he was sort of hiding in the weeds. We knew something big was coming, and then we heard what it was, and then no sooner had we finished the Cabinet of Curiosities than, as Nathan said, I mean, they were still shooting. They were still on set shooting away, and as Guillermo is known to do, he likes to sort of flesh scenes out as whole pieces of work as he's shooting. It may affect his process, I think, maybe, as he's shooting, and change things slightly. I'm not sure. So he just likes to see how the movie is coming together. And so, as Nathan said, we started receiving whole scenes pretty early on, to do, a version of full sound. I won't say full sound, but to do a version of things.
It's actually a really cool part of his process because of how he shoots. They'll shoot like single camera, and then before every shoot day, he's in super early with Evan, the editor, and they've assembled a scene and they're looking at it, and they invite anybody on set to come in and watch yesterday's shoot before they start today's. And so I think that it does. I think fleshing those scenes out and being able to show them what's been accomplished so far can really kind of stir up a bit of energy in the cast and crew who are there to, I mean, these guys, it's a pretty grueling job. So I think it's nice for them to see things come together so quickly, like mid-process like this.
Yeah. Nathan makes a very good point in that, especially with us in post, I tend to feel that because we're so down the line, sometimes we can often feel separated somehow from the quote unquote crew, the production crew. Guillermo's always been a champion of the crafts, of all the crafts, and how they all sort of contribute equally in a way to making the movie. And I think getting involved so early, it for me anyway, it's taken some of the drudgery out of making the movie, because you're so engaged so early while they're still shooting the movie, and the dialogue and all the creative dialogue has begun already with the other departments, and it's just everything seems so vital so soon. Right. So that's always a big plus to working with him.
And being involved that early whatever you send over sound wise, does that have an impact on how things are shot, or does that stir up some ideas in director Del Toro for like, oh yeah, maybe we should incorporate this into the set, or we should change how this shot looks or how it's shot to accommodate like the sound design?
I wish we could go back in time so that you guys could ask him that yesterday.
I don't see how it can't. I don't see how, I wouldn't go so far as saying to change sets or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't see how it can't influence your thinking somehow, right? Just knowing how the movie is already starting to come together and how it's taking shape, right?
He definitely doesn't work. He doesn't think linearly. He's not like us. You know what I mean? There have been times where I find myself doing a remote review of some of the tracks that we've built over Zoom or whatever, and I'll find myself being asked to invite Dennis Berardi, the VFX supervisor, into the sound review so that Guillermo can point out a detail in the sound that then, translates over to something that is usually chronologically so much earlier than we are in the process. But this is just how he works. You know what I mean? Like he'll, no stone unturned, no idea is bad. And, if it's never too late to get something cool into the movie.
Yeah. And talking about the sets, I mean, they have this like unmistakable style. There's this great dark fantastical kind of quality to them, and there was such cool stuff on the set of Frankenstein. You have the lightning rod that's like a bit damaged, and so it's got that floppy aspect to the one arm. Was any of that useful in terms of recording? Like, was that a real thing that you could have gotten sound from, or
we weren't sent the Spire. That was a note. It was very important that it sounded damaged as it was descending down into the lab. It was very important that it would sound like the whole thing was going off the rails because of the broken Spire, and it would introduce questions as to whether or not the experiment worked. But there were a few props that Guillermo made a point of sending to me. The little steam engine that runs the half cadaver on his table in his apartment, as well as the shopkeeper that he wakes up in the lecture scene. There's this little steam engine thing. It's a battery operated thing that has a little throttle, so I was able to perform
cool.
the speed, and that was a lot of fun. He sent that. He sent Victor's medicine bag because it was important to him that we get the sound of that shaking as he's chasing Elizabeth through the book market, and then the switch, the cane that Leopold smacks Victor's face with. Guillermo was adamant that sounds sharp and painful, and I got great whooshes, and I was trying to find the right smack, and I couldn't find it until I accidentally hit my leg, and I've never worked so hard to suppress like a holler, like just a scream, as I found myself in a little recording booth with a microphone next to my leg, just smacking my leg and trying to bite my fist so I wouldn't ruin the recording. But yeah, he sent us a few props like that. But yeah, no, not the Spire. But yeah, he makes sure we have fun with some of the props that sound good to him on set.
That's so awesome. Yeah, you're in the booth with the switch and you're like, oh man, that sounded so cool. Don't scream and ruin it.
Yeah. I had a welt on my leg for a while after that one.
Oh man. So let's take a look at this really long, wonderful sequence that's just sound design. So this goes from the tower explosion to the creature finding the cabin in the woods.
is that? Shoot at it! Shoot it! Did you get it?
My wounds had healed, but I felt cold, so cold.
So tell me about your opportunities or challenges for sound design here. How did you support the storytelling in this sequence through your sound work?
So yeah, I can start with that. It's a pivotal part of the movie because it's where the movie it turns a big page, and we sort of go down the rabbit hole with the creature, who we've only seen as a creature up until this point, and it's where he's born as a man at that point. We're on the tail of a sequence that we've already described. This powerful, thundering kind of sequence, this depiction of destruction that, in itself has so much brilliant sound work in it, an amazing score. And then we then move into the awakening in the tidal pool as the creature sort of, comes alive, and see that, just amongst all of this nature. And what has always stuck out for me in that sequence is how, and it's a testament to what we do as a craft, is that it's entirely post-produced. Every sound that you hear, every single modulation was created after the fact. Nothing was actually recorded on set, or whatever was recorded wasn't used, right? So every little foot or hand in the puddle, every vocalization the creature makes, even the voices of the hunters in the woods have all been added after the fact. They were all revoiced for accent reasons, taking us right into the cabin. And it's just this beautiful kind of breather in the middle of the movie that prepares the audience for the monster's tale, right? It's a prologue, basically, for the second half of the movie.
It's a huge editorial tonal shift too, because if you watch Victor's story, the first half of the movie, it's pretty, like, the way the editorial style is much more task to task. It's very task driven. It's very, I don't want to say cutty, but it's much more cutty. When we get into the creature's story, it becomes more like a fairy tale. So a lot of the edits are more sweeping, and they're smoother and more gentle. And so, yeah, you wake up in that tidal pool, and I remember Guillermo wanting to hear the height of the trees. And so that really, really distant sounding, the murmurations of leaves through the canopy overhead, hearing acorns falling on the forest floor, the foliage underfoot, the sort of, when the creature comes across the skeleton, the fallen soldier, and steals his jacket. All of those all of those elements, like Nelson said, none of that was serendipitous and sort of like handed over to us. It was all extremely deliberate and kind of guided by Guillermo and this fairy tale world he wanted to build that ultimately culminates in an attempted relationship between the creature and a deer. I remember him telling me that the deer shouldn't see the creature as anything other than another deer. There's something about his presence that isn't threatening, so they don't run away. He's just there. You know what I mean? There shouldn't be any big reactions. There shouldn't be any big vocalizations from the deer. And ultimately culminates in the gear room where there's a sympathetic little mouse welcoming him into this new shelter, you know? And from that point forward, you can feel a shift in even the editorial tone, not just the style of storytelling.
And Jacob's performance as well.
Yeah.
Jacob's performance, where, you know, he performs the back half of the movie as a child, basically, and much of the first half of the movie as a monster, right? Mm-hmm. as a creature. And it's interesting is when we voiced that with him in post-production, we had to do it in reverse sequence, and I only just thought of that. But to save his voice, we did all of the childlike stuff in the first half of the full day session and did all the creature stuff in the back half.
I love all the humanity and heart that Del Toro brings to any of the creatures or monsters in his movie. And I love that you guys are able to support that with the sound too. Like, you don't really hear the creature as an animal. It's only in a few places, like in the beginning, when the creature is trying to get to Victor and he comes across the sailing expedition and they're kind of in his way, and you hear that really powerful kind of creature roar. So actually tell me about that. Tell me about creating that creature roar. Did you enhance that in any way with animal sounds, or was that all his performance?
Oh, that was pretty enhanced. Yeah, the early Guillermo called that the formidable scream. He needed to hear that from sort of over the snow berm that Victor ultimately tumbles over, where the crew find him. And in its early life, to me, it sounded a little bit like a kaiju off on the tundra. It was too big and too monstrous. And so I remember one of the notes, Nelson, going into the final mix is like, we need some Jacob in there, because it was it was just too monstrous. And I mean, hats off to Chris Cook, our dialogue, our lead mixer, for blending Jacob's voice in with all of the sort of creature, animal, monster sounds that I built. I think that's why there's a question at all as to whether or not there are animal sweeteners in, because he really smoothed things out nicely.
Yeah, it's funny. I just thought of that, is that, again, in the first half of the movie, it seems that we were sweetening creature sounds with Jacob's voice. And in the back half of the movie, we were sweetening Jacob's voice with creature sounds. Right? It was the process was almost reversed. Yeah,
it was a real dance. There was a lot of sensitivity and a lot of discussions between Nelson and I about, like, how do we do this without doing this? How do we do this without, because like Jacob's performance he knocked it out of the park, and you could easily, it wouldn't be hard to gild that lily to go too far with sound effects, you know?
So let's take a look at that clip, actually. So this is the scene in which the creature is pursuing Victor across the frozen sea, and he has a skirmish with some sailors that he encounters on his way to get to Victor.
Kom op! Lassen, den er på vej herhen. Gør klar! Kom in, kommando!
So, what were some other challenging aspects of creating the sound for the scene? Of course, you have lots of the sailors there, and they're all yelling. You have all the firearms that they're shooting, stuff like that. So, tell me about some of the other challenges or opportunities for your sound work on this scene.
I mean, one of the big ones is going to be the guns, and the challenge there was getting them to sound right. My father-in-law works in he supplies props for movies and museums and things like that, and he's big in the reenactment scene, and he's always gone on about how how muskets never sound right in movies. I don't know what movies he's watching and referring to, but take his word for it. This movie was kind of my opportunity to go out and record some weapons with them, and we recorded them with live ammunition. That conversation started with Guillermo in the spotting session. He wanted that blunderbuss to sound really big. And so my pitch in the room was just, okay, let's record live ammunition cannons. Let's fire chain out of cannons, and start big. Everything else kind of got reverse engineered from there. We did go out and do a live ammunition recording with cannons and muskets, and thought they sounded incredible. It was just a lot of moving parts. So if we're talking just straight difficulty challenge, coordinating and organizing a record like that was a challenge, especially considering we had to reschedule it at one point because a temp mix advanced on us by over a month. But yeah, we got it done, and I thought it sounded fantastic. Apart from that, it was a lot of just mix choices. I think making sure that everything had a little bit of space to breathe, because in a big loud scene like that, where you've got mayhem everywhere, Brad Zorn and Chris Cook had to carve and weave space so that when the creature punches half a guy's head off, you can still hear gurgling blood coming out of his throat hole. You know what I mean? Or hear individual crewmates, flying off the side of a ship, or pull up the ladder. Just all these delicate little details, had to make it through. And we'll take credit for queuing all of that up, but again, we have to applaud the mixers for finding a home for all of it.
And Nelson, just like you revoiced the hunters in the woods, did you have to revoice all of the sailors out on the ice?
We did. We actually had, and also to Nathan's point about the guns, is that Guillermo loves the craft, the machinery of filmmaking so much that present him with a cool idea, like, oh, it'd be great to get these real guns and cannons, and he's all over it, and suddenly you get the okay to do it, and they find the resources to do it.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, the same goes with the Danes. We basically had to school a bunch of theater-trained Danish actors to come in and voice all of these guys in Rotterdam. And I mean, a challenge in itself, just because even with really seasoned voice actors, the tricky part to doing these types of scenes, especially if it's all male, is how to make them sound panicked and terrified without it coming off. How should I say it? It's very easy for it to slip into the realm of like a Monty Python skit, and they're still burly, seasoned, like weathered sailors, right? But I mean, they perform brilliantly. I mean, what else can I say about that? That was the main part of it, I think, for us in terms of the sailors. It brought such an authenticity to get the Danes, to actually get the Danes to do it was just huge. It's always a joy to do specifically that scene in any movie. And by that scene, I mean the big action scene in the first 10 minutes that glues the audience to their seats. It says, you're in for a ride. And for us, in terms of our craft, where we can flex right off the bat and say, here's what we came to do. Here's why you brought us on board, right? It feels like you spend 25% of the mix time on that scene, regardless of who the filmmaker is. But that scene, that one scene in that part of a movie is always, for me, the biggest pleasure to do.
I am grateful for that first edit round because actually our first pass with sound effects on that scene was Craig McClellan took a run at it, and that scene was about twice as long as it is now. And so there's a lot of gore and violence that got taken out of it before it made it to the screen.
It even shocked me, even after all these movies, is that he really, really leaned into a lot of gore in this movie.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
wow.
he didn't shy away from
When
it.
that guy's when he arches that guy does the scorpion, like he breaks
Yeah,
the guy's back the wrong way. It's
yeah,
crazy. He
yeah.
rips one guy's face off. Like, it's
I mean,
wow.
I've seen plenty of people in theaters try and cover their eyes, but you can't hide from the sound.
That's true. You can't hide from
Yeah, hide from both, man.
So let's take a look at one last clip here. This is the thunderstorm scene in which Victor, he's getting the lab equipment ready for his experiment of bringing the creature to life. So this is one of the scenes that is supported by the score. Can you talk about crafting your sound design to complement what's happening musically? Because they complement each other so well.
Yeah, I think again, this is one of those scenes. This was the scene because it's such an iconic conceptual scene. The birth of the creature in Frankenstein. It was really important to me. This is the one that kind of gave me the idea that, hey, everybody on the team should be a part of this. I don't want anyone to say, hey, that's all me, but I want every last one of us to say, there I am, when they're listening to this scene. And I think that we really stuck that landing. Everybody got a full pass on the scene. It did ultimately come down to me to curate who got to shine and when. But yeah, every one of us got a good hard swing at that scene, and that's kind of the bird's eye view of it in terms of the process and the approach to build it. There wasn't really one anchor point. I think, one of the ear candy moments is when we do zoom into the chest of the creature.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's super fun, and that involves everybody. Like, everybody is a part of that. The music, the score. Chris had to duck out of any sync sound. Brad got to wrap us with these sounds, like through the surrounds. We really got to travel into that chest cavity with the camera. And that one's like, that's a fun moment. But this whole, that whole concept was so temp the first time that we took a run at the scene that, none of those fun little ear candy moments had even occurred to us yet. It was really just about kind of getting all of the mechanics down, like all of the literal stuff down. If a spark flares, let's hit the spark. One of our editors, Scott Hitchin, cut the thunderstorm and he cut it during a thunderstorm. And I think he was losing his mind a little bit because he'd hear a really good crack, and then it wouldn't be there the next time he pressed play. But yeah, for us, it was really just a matter of making sure everybody got their hands dirty.
I love how in that scene, as you said, you go from this huge world, like this huge storm is happening, lightning strikes, you have this power up of these energy cells, and then all of a sudden it goes from like this huge external world into this internal world of the creature's inner workings. And I love how you guys pulled that off, because it's like, it was just so perfect, like going into the body, and it didn't feel, I guess because the sounds were so close when you go in there, like it wasn't this huge shift in dynamics.
Yeah, thanks. I have to send a big shout out. I'm going to single out Dash Naidu. He was the mastermind behind the initial sketch of the sounds we used to go into the chest cavity. But yeah, I think that one, just because of the nature of how that scene is built, it was really a less is more situation. It was peeling back the layers, and much like anything else, right? Like the same can be said for the dialogue when we're up on top of the tower with Harlander in the rainstorm with thunder. It still felt to me like a lot of weather, but I wasn't missing any of the words, So
Yeah.
that scene, that was one of those scenes that was, to me, it was a lot about. It's basically the opposite of the forest scene that we talked about before. That was all about addition. This scene was all about sort of selective subtraction.
Yeah, and we're also with Guillermo. I think we often work with an advantage in that the aesthetic that we're provided with visually is just is so distinct and so engaging. He's great at presenting future as viewed from the past. So, I mean, even if you look at, say, the laboratory in The Shape of Water, right? It's a similar kind of thing. So, the palette that you're given with in terms of the mechanics and the batteries, and again, to a really weathered term, but the steampunk aesthetic that he mastered long before steampunk was a thing. It's it provides you all of these opportunities to use these really analog sounds and sort of isolate them, that Nathan has done so well with his team, and to be able to present them in this in this cinematic way. Right.
Yeah, like those power cells. That was so awesome. And yeah, it's like futuristic retro kind of vibe to it. Yeah. Well,
and you mentioned the spire, and when people have talked to me after the movie, and more than any other movie, they've mentioned the sound to me and how much they like the sound. That spire and that bent arm and the little swing that everybody mentions that sound. And I'm always like, why that sound? Like, so many things are happening that are so cool, but that thing just really is just an appealing, cool sound for a really neat visual,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the damage, the like rattle as it descends into the lab. I remember thinking like, that's going to be a thing that we're going to have to take a few swings at. But to be honest, I'm pretty sure the first sketch of that came from Paul Gurman, and I think it survived right to the end. There you go. This is the trifecta. These are the three main editors that were working with me, Paul, Craig, and Dash, adding in Scott, of course. But yeah, these guys, they knocked it out of the park. We got some amazing sounds on first pass for a lot of these elements. Things that I thought we were going to have to take more than one swing at. We just happened to connect on, and that was one of them.
So were there any elements or scenes that required like numerous iterations before you really hit on what it was?
The ones this is like in the beginning of the movie when the sailors are chiseling at the ice to free the boat, it was really important to Guillermo that sounded like hard ice that was, growing around a boat and just crushing the boat. And, all of the stuff that you'd think would take multiple passes was a first pass thing. It was like the inside the cabin, you could hear the boat being compressed by the ice. And that didn't take a lot of revisions. It was the actual axe picking. And every
Wow.
time I brought more to Guillermo, he'd say, "We need more." There was no such thing as too much. And in the end, we had a pretty crazy winter last year, and I got some ice dams on my roof. And I don't know if you're familiar with what an ice dam is, but basically,
Yeah.
it just builds up into a tree trunk of ice. And one of those fell off of my house and did an enormous amount of damage and caused a huge amount of chaos. But you make lemonade when you're given lemons. So I went out there with a recorder and a hammer, and I started pounding on that thing, and I put it all in, and then I brought it back to him, and he was like, "It's great." I think it's maybe the most expensive sound in the movie, more than the cannons, because of the damage that thing did.
Oh, I'm sure hitting it with a hammer must have been very cathartic as
Oh,
well.
yeah. A little bit of violence will get anything out of your system.
Oh, exactly. So I think that's all the time that we have. Just one final question for you guys. What has stuck with you the most from your experience of creating the sound or working on the sound for Frankenstein?
That's a very good question. Nathan has said before that it's sort of part of, I don't know if I'm wording this the right way, but part of it kind of made itself, like it willed itself into existence. It felt, even at the time, like it was the movie he was born to make. He's more or less alluded to that it is the movie he was born to make, and that he is sort of, closed a chapter in his filmmaking career. In having done this, we were aware of it at the time. He seemed, I mean, obviously there were lots of changes and things that went along the way, but at a very, very early stage, what I saw was a filmmaker who was in his full command of his powers, and who had reached, he knew, like he was very happy with where the movie was, way, way earlier than I had ever seen before. He, even in dialogue with the actors, early on, he was saying, "We've got a really good movie here." Like, he was very, very satisfied very early. And I remember that. And I think it affected the process, right? In terms of how satisfied he was, how soon. Or maybe we just got it right. Maybe we sort of went through the same thing, and we just got it right way earlier as well than we would have in the past. I don't know.
He's reflected with me about how the movie felt like it wanted to get made. I don't know. I could hear the hesitation in your voice, Nelson, when you said the movie made itself, because I definitely don't.
No.
Definitely don't feel like it made itself.
No,
but it always felt like it was cooperating with us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if that meant sending an ice dam off my roof and totaling a structure that I had just finished building the previous summer. It was just, the movie just felt like it wanted to be made. And I think part of the reason why that is because of the shorthand we've developed with Guillermo over the years. Because we're more than a decade in with him now. He understands how to ask what he wants, and he trusts us to deliver that. And so, although this is a high stakes film for him, it never felt overwhelming in terms of being high pressure. And what my takeaway from that is, the one kind of snapshot is a kind of a take a step back, bird's eye view, is that, through all the challenges, through the mountains we had to move to reschedule a cannon and musket recording, or, advancing temp mixes and stuff like that. Through all of that, it's the most fun I've ever had making a movie. And I think you can hear it in the track. Like, I think that if you're listening, you can hear that this track was made by people who love the source material, enjoyed the process, could really get behind the challenge, and just delivered. The movie wanted to be made.
And I think you're right. You can always hear when something was a joy to make. You can always hear the joy and the fun when it's put into the soundtrack. So Excellent work on Frankenstein, Nelson and Nathan. Best of luck to you both this award season.
Thank you.